It is crazy to believe that by the end of this very month, free agency is going to be starting literally 2 days after the 2020 NBA draft. So basically, with all the draft content that I have planned, if I was going to do another free agent video before the players started signing everywhere and make sure that it's still current for you guys to watch, I had to do it right now. So I've got 2 videos for you guys about free agency. The one that you're watching right now, and then another one dropping later today, where I'm going to go through all 30 teams. I'm starting in the Eastern Conference with the 15 teams there, and I'm going to look at the needs of each team. I'm telling you some things that I think they need to address this offseason. And then I'm going to lay out 3 free agents that each team should target. Guys, thanks for tuning into the channel today. If it's your first time here, my name is Troy. So glad you're clicking on the video today. This video took a lot of time to put together, so I ask you please show some love by clicking that thumbs up button. Helps me out and helps in growing the channel. Lets YouTube know that other people are liking this type of content. I am also at 10,000 subscribers as well, so you got to make sure you click that subscription button. Be a part of one of the fastest growing basketball channels on YouTube. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be doing the same type of video for the Western Conference. Make sure you look for that video later today. First up, though, is the Eastern Conference, and let's get into it, starting alphabetically with the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks have made it clear that they want to make a return to the playoffs as early as next season. As for their needs, in order to do that, they're going to have to get a backup point guard because Trae Young cannot do it all. They're going to need some three-point shooting because last season it was the worst in the NBA. And those three-point shooters are also going to need to be quality defenders. They need perimeter defense because as long as Trae Young is your centerpiece, defense is going to be an issue for your team. So who should they target? I think Jerami Grant would really do well on that team. They have the money to get that signing done. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, sign him from the world champion Lakers. He would provide that three-point shooting and that defensive intensity. And speaking of defensive intensity, Chris Dunn, this guy playing backup point guard with the Chicago Bulls. I love him for his grittiness, his defense, and his ability to always be in the middle of a play, get his hands on a ball. Moving on to the Boston Celtics and their needs to take care of this offseason. Also a backup point guard, because who runs the team when Kemba Walker sits? Marcus Smart is better off the ball. Yeah, you've got Brad Wanamaker. Yeah, you've got Carson Edwards with his insane thigh muscles, but those 2 guys are not getting it done. They just aren't. So you need a backup point guard. You also need big men because Daniel Tice, Enes Kanter, Robert Williams III, they all bring a little bit in their own way, but I think as a starting caliber center, they're not cutting it. So the free agent targets, Rajon Rondo, send him back to the Celtics, the team that drafted him, the team where he had his greatest success as a pro player. He would be an amazing backup point guard for them. And to fill that big guy spot, I like Derek Favors and I like DeMarcus Cousins. Either one of those guys. Either could start for this team. DeMarcus Cousins is looking for that next team where he can rebuild his NBA career, and I think he would get the minutes on the Celtics to do that. Hey, now we've got the Brooklyn Nets and their needs for next season, veteran leadership. They need some solid veterans because they are competing for a championship next season with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. When you have guys like KD and Kyrie in the locker room, you need those established veterans who can help manage those large personalities. They had Garrett Temple last year, but really, who else did they have? And it doesn't look like they're picking up the option for Garrett Temple. And next, they just need to take care of business. And by that, I mean they need to re-sign their free agents who helped them get to the position they were in this year and will help them moving forward. That means Joe Harris has to be a priority for the Brooklyn Nets. I also like Paul Millsap and Jared Dudley as some veterans that they can get on the team. Paul Millsap, I think, could still contribute some valuable minutes to the squad. Jared Dudley, one of the best bench cheerleaders in the league, one of the best veterans in the league. He brought a wealth of veteran leadership to the Lakers this past offseason. The Charlotte Hornets, They need a lot of things, guys. They really do. First off, they need high upside players because they are nowhere near competing for the playoffs. They need guys to add to that core of Devontae Graham, PJ Washington, Miles Bridges, Terry Rozier, if you consider him part of that core. Their lotto pick that they'll have coming up in the draft. They need at least 2 of these guys to pan out and become near all-star level players. Then with all the cap space this year, they can potentially get another. So they need to be finding guys that can work well with those players, but also have that chance to break out on their own. Next, they need rebounding. They were ranked in the bottom third of the league when it came to rebounding. Sure, that may help if they end up getting James Wiseman or Onyeka Okongwu in the draft, but until then, some of the free agents they need to target. Montrezl Harrell, 6th man of the year from the Clippers. I think he could start along PJ Washington for the Hornets, especially if the rookie that they end up drafting, assuming it's Wiseman or Okongwu, isn't quite ready for that starting job. I also like Harry Giles III and Christian Wood to fill that front court spot. Christian Wood, a little bit more established these days. He's going to command a really big contract that Charlotte will be able to give him. Harry Giles, kind of take a flyer on this guy. He did have some good minutes and some good games when he was with Sacramento last year. He's from North Carolina, kind of a bit of a homecoming for him. The Chicago Bulls need lead playmaking. If you could combine the talents of Tomas Satoransky, Kobe White, Ryan Arcidiacono, those guys could be an awesome point guard if you combine them all together. But until then, you still need help in that spot. They also need high-end shooting because the shots that the Bulls took last season weren't always the most efficient. I also, like a lot of young teams, they need some veterans, guys who can help out during the grind of a long season. I like DJ Augustine to help fill that playmaking spot. I also like Pat Connaughton and Davis Bertans to fill those veteran spots, but also provide some high-end shooting, especially when we're talking about Bertans. The Cleveland Cavaliers need capable wings with size. Darius Garland and Colin Sexton can't get it done long-term starting at the 1 and the 2, in my opinion. I think one of them needs to go to the bench. Maybe it'll end up being Kevin Porter Jr. who breaks out. Maybe he can become one of their capable wings, but the sample size for him is still pretty small to know for sure. They also need defense because, again, they need somebody to help defend those bigger players. Kevin Love is also not a defensive stalwart by any means. Free agent targets, I think Josh Jackson, Derrick Jones Jr., and Andre Roberson each could bring not only some defensive versatility, some wing versatility, but in the case of Jackson and Jones have shown that maybe they're ready to break out and they're ready for a larger role. Andre Roberson, I think you could get him for a pretty cheap deal, and if he gets back to the defensive type of player he was with the Thunder before his injuries, that's a really good signing. The Detroit Pistons need playmaking because they have some decent talent, but Derrick Rose is more of a scoring point guard and less the type of point guard who's going to break down the opposing defenses and get guys their shots. They also need another building block. They need somebody to give their boatloads of cap space to. I'm not saying they should just give out a contract for the sake of doing it, but if a guy fits the roster and he can grow with the team, then I think that's something you need to pull the trigger on. Free agent targets for them. DJ Augustine making another appearance on this list as a playmaking point guard. I also like Fred VanVleet and Christian Wood. Both guys will command large contracts. Detroit will have the cap space to get it done. I think both of those guys would be integral parts of their team moving forward. With Christian Wood, they've invested a lot into him already. It would be pretty foolish to let him get away to another team. The Indiana Pacers need three-point shooting because they did not hit a ton of those shots last year. They also need bench scoring because Jeremy Lamb is out. They need that microwave scoring off the bench. And I also think they need some toughness because when you look at that roster, you've got TJ McConnell, but who else can really come off the bench and give you some toughness, give you some of that gritty play that sometimes you need to grind out a win? I think free agent targets could be Jordan Clarkson because, Victor Oladipo has come out and says he doesn't want to be traded, but that's still a tricky situation. Plus, he would help with their bench depth. I also like Juancho Hernangomez and Markieff Morris. Both of those guys would give you some help in the front court. Juancho would give you the three-point shooting that you're lacking, and Markieff Morris, he can provide some three-point shooting, but also, as we saw in the playoffs, can also provide some toughness to that team. The defending Eastern Conference champion Miami Heat, they just need to run it back because the Eastern Conference is going to be even tougher next year. They're going to need to re-sign the guys who helped them get to that spot. They also need that one final piece. They need another scorer to take the load off of Jimmy Butler, take the load off Bam Adebayo when those guys don't have it. So they need to re-sign Jay Crowder and Goran Dragic. That's a top priority. Another priority, get Danilo Gallinari on that team. I know they had some interest in him last year. I think he has interest in going there. He could start for them at that 4 spot, and he would just be bombing away from 3 and really help their offense out. The Milwaukee Bucks need playmaking because Eric Bledsoe is an all right player, but I'm really not sure that he's the answer for what Milwaukee needs right now. They don't have the money for a big signing, but maybe they can get lucky in the free agent pool. They also need shot creation because Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton cannot do it all the time. They need somebody else to score when those two guys don't have it on a given night. They also need championship experience because if they want to take that next step, they need the guys who can teach the younger players how to win when the game is on the line. They need somebody who can help to motivate them and somebody who has been there before. So for free agent targets, I think Isaiah Thomas would do a nice job with that team. He had some injuries last year and for the last couple of years. By all accounts, he's feeling good. He's healthy. You can get him for a very, very cheap deal, and he can have a lot of production on that Milwaukee team. I also like Rajon Rondo manning that point guard spot. And then if you want championship experience, you can't do much better than Marc Gasol winning that championship with the Raptors. He would also serve as another playmaker and a big guy who can stretch the floor and really communicate on the offensive and the defensive end. The New York Knicks, they need a team identity. This team is more than just a bad owner. This is more than just a team who signed a ton of power forwards last year. Leon Rose is helping to change the perception of who the Knicks are, but your offense needs to be more than just letting RJ Barrett or Mitchell Robinson go down the floor and score a bucket. They also need three-point shooting. They need to spread the floor, get some 3-and-D type players in there, open up that floor a little bit. The Knicks also need something to root for. They need something where the fans will be excited for this team and have a belief that the team is going somewhere. They're still a few seasons away, but no more trying to reboot every season. They need to stick with a consistent rebuilding plan. So free agent targets, Christian Wood, they're going to have the money to sign him. I like him in that front court spot with Mitchell Robinson. Also Justin Holiday, great 3-and-D player. And then how about a return of Carmelo Anthony to MSG or wherever they're going to end up playing next year, because Carmelo has shown that he can still contribute in the league, and I think the fans would like to welcome him back to New York. The Orlando Magic need three-point shooting. No surprise there because Terrence Ross and Evan Fournier, they've got those guys, but really, who else do they have? And is Evan Fournier even part of the future? So you need to start looking toward what you're going to be doing to replace him. They also need culture fits. They need future pieces for this franchise, players that fit your style of play. And you've made the playoffs the last couple years, and that's great. But get some veterans in there that can grow with the team, that can take you to that next level, because the vision of this team is one that competes hard, one that defends at a high level. You drafted Chuma Okeke, you drafted Mo Bamba, who can supposedly embody that. Now get in free agents that can do that as well. I like Jay Crowder for this team, I like Mo Harkless, and I like Rondé Hollis Jefferson. All three guys can provide some levels of defense. Jay Crowder, probably the best three-point shooter of the group. Mo Harkless and Hollis Jefferson, depending on the night, can maybe hit a 3 or 2. More so with Harkless, though. The Philadelphia 76ers need scoring guards that fit Doc Rivers' system. Think Jamal Crawford and Lou Williams types of players that he had great success with the Clippers. Maybe they'll get in the draft, maybe they'll sign somebody, but that needs to be one of their priorities. They also need a backup point guard. If that scoring guard can give you some backup point guard minutes, even better. They also need low-cost veterans because next year, the Sixers have $145 million in contracts with no major expiring contracts. They need guys who can produce and aren't going to cost a lot of money. So that being said, I think Jordan Clarkson, if they can somehow maybe get him on a cheaper deal, would be an amazing option at that backup point guard spot and also give you some scoring off the bench. Kyle Korver, you could get him for that veterans minimum. Who can provide better consistent three-point shooting than him, And then Shabazz Napier, who I think is a little bit underrated. He can give you some shooting. He can also give you some backup point guard minutes. The Toronto Raptors need to decide which veterans are going to be on this team. So who are you going to keep? Because you've got Serge Ibaka, you've got Fred VanVleet, you've got Marc Gasol, all those players on expiring contracts. They also need to have an eye toward the future. So any player they sign needs to be signed through the lens of what's happening with Giannis Antetokounmpo. This player that we're signing, will he be able to play with Giannis when and if he signs here? Or will his contract be off the books by the time Giannis is potentially ready to sign here in free agency? So they need to lock up their guys with Fred VanVleet and Serge Ibaka. And I also like Aaron Baines because he would be a cheaper replacement for Marc Gasol. Could still add some of that playmaking and could also add some of that three-point shooting ability. The Washington Wizards need rebounding, and this is something that can be addressed with size in the front court. They had some of the worst rebounding in the entire NBA last season. And their defense was not good either. That needs to be a priority for this offseason. The Wizards have a lot to fix. So free agent targets. I think Davis Bertans needs to be a guy that they re-sign. Might not be a long-term fit for what the Wizards are trying to do, but they need to re-sign him, if for anything, with the possibility to trade him at a later time. Very similar to what happened with Blake Griffin when he re-signed with the Clippers and was traded to the Pistons a few months later, because Bertans is going to be a hot commodity. The Wizards also need to think about signing Hassan Whiteside because you can't get much better in the rebounding department than Whiteside, and he can give you some defense close to the basket. And Nerlens Noel, he's still very young. He can give you some defense. He can give you some scoring on some putbacks, act as a bit of a rim runner. Would be a cheap option at that center spot. Guys, that's what I think, but let me know in the comments what you think of these free agent moves and if you can think of any players that I might have missed and what teams they should go to. Remember, I'm going to have the video talking about the Western Conference teams and their free agent signings later on today. So make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos because I upload several times a week. We are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. Would love for you to be a part of this channel. Thanks again for watching. My name is Troy with the Half Court Report, and I'll see you next time.